Hello there everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Elliot Webber and welcome to the final episode of BTCC What If, the series on my channel where of course we have been taking certain moments or certain things that have happened or things that might have happened in the past or present of BTCC, and we look what would have happened had it played out differently, or what would happen if a thing happened in the BTCC. And of course I had to save this one for last, and this is of course what if Steve Soper and John Cleland didn't crash out in the 1992 BTCC finale. So as always, let's get straight into this. Now, of course, if some of you viewers were around back then, you of course will already know what happened, and of course it has been talked about. Of course, 31 years later, it's still getting talked about. Of course, for people like me who obviously weren't around back then or might not have heard about it, of course, we are talking about the iconic finale of the 1992 BTCC season at Silverstone, where it was John Cleland versus Tim Harvey for the 1992 British Touring Car Championship crown. Of course, Tim Harvey was driving for what was back then the factory BMW team, the Listerine livery, I believe run by Vic Lee Racing at the time. Of course, a very shady man. It was Vic Lee back then, of course. However, you're probably wondering, well, where does Steve Soper come into this? Well, Steve Soper was Tim Harvey's teammate at BMW, and Steve Soper, of course, has been a BMW man for pretty much all eternity. But yeah, of course, as we know, team orders were kind of a thing back then. So Steve Soper was being, of course, the number 2 driver, to put it nicely, and was, of course, trying to help Tim Harvey become champion. And this led to a great but controversial battle between John Cleland in the Vauxhall and Steve Soper in the BMW. It went on for laps and laps and laps, and I need to point out something, that the gap between Cleland and Harvey going into Silverstone was just 1 point. Wow, a close BTCC title fight. We haven't seen that in a long time. But yeah, so yeah, of course, Soper, Cleland battling out for laps and laps and laps. It led to some a very not safe for work gesture by Mr. Cleland, as the great Murray Walker put it. Cleland was going for first. I'm sure you can figure out what I mean by that, but if not, I will put a picture or a video up of what he actually meant by going for first. But anyway, yeah, it then led to the two coming side by side into Brooklands corner. John Cleland, of course, a very, very stereotypical touring car driver, I think is a good way to put it. He sent his Vauxhall up the inside into, I believe it was Brooklands, heading into Luffield. He then, of course, hit the curb, went up onto 2 wheels, and then he had passed Soper until Steve Soper, some people say purposely, but I'm just going to say he made contact with John Cleland. They both went soaring off the road, which meant, of course, John Cleland was out of the race and out of the championship, thus giving Tim Harvey his first and only BTCC title at the end of the race, and of course at the end of the season. And of course, this iconic battle, some of the words that were said between Cleland and Soper, most notably what John Cleland had to say in a post-race interview, the iconic "the man's an animal" line, still is one of the funniest lines I think I've ever heard come out of a BTCC driver's mouth. But yeah, it was an iconic battle, and of course, if it wasn't iconic, I wouldn't be talking about it today. And of course, we are going to talk about what would happen had Soper and Cleland not crashed out. So let's just talk about what I think would happen. Now, of course, you're probably wondering, why was Cleland so eager to get past Steve Soper? Well, of course, Cleland, I think, pretty much had to stay ahead of Steve Soper, because I do think that Tim Harvey was just 1 position ahead of them, which meant all John Cleland had to do was, I think, just pass and stay ahead of Steve Soper to become the 1992 BTCC champion, which at the time would have been his 2nd ever title. But of course, then as we go down the years, he of course already has 2 championships at time of recording, with 1989 and 1995. However, had he won 1992, he would have been a 3-time champion. So yeah, what do I think Cleland would have got past anyway? I mean, had Soper not taken him out, again, you can disagree with me, but from the videos I've seen, it did look pretty intentional from Steve Soper. So yeah, honestly, I don't think Cleland would have got past Soper. We know, of course, Soper can be very aggressive when it comes to his touring car racing. Of course, he has had some iconic battles, iconic and controversial, over the years of his career. But yeah, I don't think Cleland would have been able to get past Soper because of Steve Soper's, ability to defend, dirty or not. Obviously, but that's a bit boring, me saying, I don't think he would have passed, because then, of course, we know that had Cleland not passed Soper, Tim Harvey would be champion. So, of course, if Tim Harvey stays champion, history just repeats itself, of course. Cleland stays a 2-time champ. Tim Harvey stays the 1992 champion. He, of course, later on down the line becomes a commentator and pundit for ITV, eating lots of pies and cakes. Hello, Dan Canish. So yeah, but okay, let's just spin it and see what would happen if John Cleland had become the 1992 champion. So let's just say they don't crash. Well, of course, that's the point of the video. They don't crash. Cleland becomes champion. Of course, later on, a few years later, he also becomes 1995 BTCC champion. He does retire, like real life, at the end of 1999. But I think before Tim Harvey would become a commentator, which I believe was 2003, 2004, was his first years of commentating for BTCC on ITV. I actually think John Cleland would have done it. We know John Cleland has actually been a commentator in the past. He's been a co-commentator for the World Touring Car Championship back in the mid-2000s. In fact, he had another very iconic line at a race at Oschersleben, I believe it was, for the World Touring Car Championship, where he said the guy who designed that corner deserves to be taken into a dark room and beaten. If you recognise that quote, then you definitely know what I'm on about. I do think John Cleland would actually become a commentator in that sense, and I do think that he actually would become a commentator or at least a pundit. I think similar to what Tim Harvey and Paul O'Neill are to ITV at the minute. Of course, we both know that they are doing commentary work. And of course, we both know Tim Harvey is, of course, the co-commentator to David Addison with all the BTCC races and, of course, the Porsche races on the Toka package. And we do know Paul O'Neill does the co-commentary with Richard John Neal for the other championships that aren't the Porsches and touring cars. So yeah, I think Cleland would be something like that. I definitely think Cleland would be up to it. And plus, we know how knowledgeable John Cleland is. Of course, go back to the 90s. He was arguably the most popular driver on the grid, aside from a few like Alain Menu and whatnot. But yeah, I definitely think that after Cleland's career, after he won 1992, if he did, in this scenario, I definitely think that Cleland would retire, like real life, and he would become a pundit. I think it'd be very interesting to see his insights. Of course, we know he does actually still watch the BTCC product. We know he's been fairly vocal about Ash Sutton, in a good way, don't worry. Of course, he has spoken on about Ash Sutton, saying that he is growing to be one of the greats, and of course could very well, in a few years' time, potentially be challenging Plato for that most race wins record. So yeah, that is pretty much it, guys. Another bit of a short one. I honestly couldn't really figure out what was going to happen after each driver won this title. So yeah, I was just eerily trying to figure out what to do in that case, and I think I've come to the right conclusion. But anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think would have happened had Cleland and Soper not crashed out in the iconic 1992 finale? Of course, if you're new around here, be sure to like this video, share with your mates as well, because it of course does help my channel grow, and of course press that subscribe button, because we are firmly on the road to 200 subscribers. We are currently on 188 subscribers at time of recording. So of course, if you're new here, thanks for subscribing. And yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. That is the end of BTCC What If. What were your thoughts on BTCC What If? Did you like this new series? Did you not? Would you like to see a second series? Because I might bring this back in 2024. Who knows? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, guys. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.